This is Caffeinated Risk, the podcast for security professionals by security professionals. Here are your two self-proclaimed grumpy security guys, Tim McCreate and Doug Leese.
Welcome, folks, to Season 4 of Caffeinated Risk. For our second podcast, we chat with Stephen Ross, Executive Principal with Riskmasters International. Stephen is a specialist in business continuity management, IT disaster recovery planning, and information security. He's implemented BCM programs, DR plans, and conducted resilience preparations for banks, government agencies, and industrial organizations. Before founding Riskmasters International, he was with Deloitte as the leader of their BCM practice. His most recent focus is on resilience and recoverability of large business and technology environments, targeting BC programs, designing resilient data centers, and pandemic planning. Stephen's the editor of the multi-volume series E-Commerce Security and is the author of several books in that series. He's also active with ISACA, presenting at numerous events, and is also a regular contributor to the ISACA Journal. And now, let's check out our latest podcast with Stephen Ross.
Thank you very much for joining us today, Stephen.
My pleasure.
Read one of your articles in the ISACA Journal. Who is this person? This is exactly what we talk about all the time. And I'm really happy you're able to come on the show today.
My pleasure.
Same, Stephen. I had a chance to actually review some of the information that was written that you've actually had a chance to create. And one, I found it was really interesting. You were talking about privacy and this concept of legislation and privacy. And I kind of wanted to get your perspective on it because I've been in roles before where I was responsible or I had privacy as part of it, or I worked with the privacy team or the privacy officer, and the concept of protecting the data because of a legislative mandate as opposed to it just should be good business.
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to get your thoughts and for the audience to hear it as well about some of your thoughts and perspectives on privacy.
I've got a couple of different viewpoints that have evolved over the course of time, but the first point is, if there was no law against thievery, would you steal your neighbor's lawnmower? I mean, we don't need to have laws to do the right thing.
Right.
And keeping other people's personal information private is just the right thing to do. And it's good business sense as well. You don't please customers by giving away their information.
True. Yeah, very true.
But the more and more that I've looked into these privacy laws and the way that they are enforced, or quite frankly, not enforced, I've come to a rather different point of view, and that is that privacy is not really a legal issue at all. It's a data management issue. And if we treat privacy as an attribute of certain data fields, name, address, social security, or SIN in Canada.
Yeah.
We can start building rule sets around the way the information is used that would enforce privacy all by itself, not a whole lot differently than we do with access control.
Interesting. Yeah.
Just letting everybody have access to everything is bad business sense. We don't have to pass a law against it. So we build access control systems and we define what people should have access to and what they shouldn't. So why not build data models that define what should be done with the data and what shouldn't?
Right. Yeah.
To me, this is, it just makes sense. And the more and more I've dealt with it, the more convinced I've become. And I also see, however, that it has repercussions that go beyond just, okay, how do we manage the data? It starts saying that privacy is not something that the legal department should be handling. They could advise, but this becomes something for data management. And then lots of organizations don't have data managers. They've got database administrators, which isn't the same thing.
Right.
So if we can say, okay, now there's the data manager has to have a very elevated position who has got the ability to make decisions who should have access, who shouldn't, what the access should be for, how the data is going to be used, etc.
Yes.
For those of us in information security, we've been down that path. We know that fight. I've been doing this close to 5 decades now, and I can remember in the early days, who are you, kid? What are you telling me to do?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think that this is going to evolve in that direction, but it's going to take people like us and like privacy people to start pushing it. However, so many of the privacy people and the privacy organizations are dominated by lawyers.
Yes. Yes.
So it's saying you've got to step back and let somebody else who can actually make this work step forward.
I think there's also a business pressure on this data to squeeze out new opportunities to market to people that may not really be originally what the customer thought they were signing up for.
Mm-hmm.
And when does that become a privacy thing? When is that just, you dealt with us, so we're going to do the digital equivalent of putting balloons up in the store and say, come buy something else? I know that there's opportunities even when you de-identify a user that you can re-identify them once something else comes to light. And when we're seeing so many data breaches, and it's the same people dealing with different companies, you start to get these almost identifiable profiles of people. How do we make sure we stay on the line of making compelling offers to people that are appropriate versus we're actually spying on you and dropping things in your email that you wouldn't want anybody to know?
Well, I think you're almost dividing the population into 3 groups that are the violators as such. Mm. Number one, there are the organizations that didn't mean to violate privacy, but there was a breach. Number 2, and I don't want to pick on any particular company, but I think you know the ones I mean, the data aggregators who are going out of their way to make sure that they know what you're buying, where you're going, who you're speaking to, et cetera, et cetera. And then the third one is the bad guys, the cyber attackers, who are just stealing data.
Right.
Which is, of course, anytime there's a theft of personal information, it's a privacy breach.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
All right. So working our way backwards, we're not going to solve cybersecurity today. I guarantee you that. And I don't know that we're ever going to, quote, solve it. There's always going to be bad guys, and they're always going to try to do something they shouldn't do, or we don't want them to do. Mm-hmm. And we're going to fight that battle forever. All we can do is try to contain it. Mm-hmm. For the ones who are inadvertently letting data out, it's a matter of poor controls. And I really do believe that what I was saying about building privacy in as an attribute, privacy by design, if you will,
right.
Which I won't, by the way. I've got some...
Okay.
I've always said, I don't care what you designed. Tell me what you did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The sentiment is nice, though. I mean, at least they thought about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It comes right from Ontario, too.
I know the person who was responsible for some of that. Absolutely.
Yep.
Dr. Dvorkin. You bet. Yeah.
So the middle group is the one that is actually, in my opinion, causing the most problems most of the time.
Okay.
I know that when I pick up I don't pick up my morning newspaper anymore. I pick up my cell phone and I read the newspaper. And whatever it was that I happened to look for online yesterday shows us up in an advertisement today.
Yes. Yep.
I happen to be one of these sons of a gun that, it's very hard to influence me with an ad. Other than just chuckling as to why am I suddenly looking at ceiling tiles commercial. I happen to be doing a project for a company that makes ceiling tiles.
Yeah. Not very subtle, but yeah.
But, the the question isn't so much what's showing up in advertisements. The question is what's showing up somewhere else that I don't know about.
Yeah.
And I do think this may be a subject that legislation will make a difference, but it's got to be legislation with teeth. I just sat in on the briefing from the law firm that tracks GDPR enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there was a $1.2 billion fine. Great. But what they almost never tell you, and I ask them this every year, and I have to really work my way through all kinds of records to find out, is how many cases were brought, how many cases were dismissed, how many cases resulted in fines, and then when you say of that, how much was the top 20, and then everybody else.
Right. Right.
It works out that other than going after truly serial offenders on a large scale, it doesn't have much in the way of teeth. So I'm not seeing anything that's going to make a difference there. Now, I understand that Europe is looking into legislation or regulations that would at least control that area. Quite frankly, in neither the United States nor Canada do I see any appetite for reining in the Googles and the Metas of the world.
We have a mobile device that's usually not more than a few feet away from us. You can start to do a lot of learning about human behavior this way. And I think there's good and bad to these things, but it's starting to feel a lot more like, in these science fiction surveillance things than I think people realize. And we're just sort of walking into it blindly.
Worse than that, we haven't yet let AI loose on all this information.
Mm-hmm.
No.
And, it doesn't take an awful lot of imagination to figure out what could be done. I recommend to all the college students I mentor, that's your career. There it is.
Yeah. Well, I kind of wanted to pull on that thread a little bit, Stephen, in the past, let's say 10, even 5 years, has what you've seen change in the technology, AI being one, changes to privacy, et cetera, how has that changed your approach to organizational resilience, or when you're working with folks on, the concepts of business continuity or recovering from an incident? Has that influenced or changed your approach and how you're working now with your folks that you deal with?
Well, the answer is it's an entirely different paradigm and a different mindset. I'm actually doing a project right now where they invite me back every 5 years.
Wow.
Take another look. How are we doing?
That's interesting. That 5-year gap, that's significant in some ways, but that's got to be interesting to see just the step change between where you were and 5 years ago.
As it happens, this one has gone 8 years because the company itself went through some major changes. But the point is, the previous 3 projects, the issue was what happens if something happens to the data center? The data center burns down.
Right.
This time they say, we figured that one out. The question is no longer that. The question is, what if we can't access our information at all?
Right.
How do we run the business? And without giving away anything specific about a particular client, they all fall into the same conundrum, which is you may have set a recovery time objective of a day.
Right.
Well, sorry, it's not going to happen in a day. It's not going to happen in 2. We can, and I think we should be finding ways to recover. When I say recover, I think it's more like restore. Bare metal restores, validation of data, roll forward. But it takes days, sometimes weeks. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, we've heard enough cases of it took us a whole year to get back to absolute normal. But at least you could limp along after a certain period of time, but that certain period of time is far greater than the business feels that it can absorb. So now what?
Yeah. We had a similar interruption of data access here in Calgary, a large company. But it was that exact thing of what if you can't get to all the data? Because most of our DR and business continuity assume a certain portion of the infrastructure is still available and trustable. And the minute you hit it with something like a criminal gang or a nation state actor, you can't trust any of it.
Exactly.
Even just the mechanics of getting backups off of a backup platform, you can only go so fast. And if you have 6 systems with a recovery time objective of a day, and it's going to take 2 days to restore each one of them, who goes first?
The who goes first is more a matter of people than anything else.
But shouldn't it be tied to the first thing that would matter to your customers?
Well, there's another, going back to your question, Tim, there's another factor that I wouldn't say past 5 years, it's probably closer to 10, maybe even more, is the intense concentration of applications.
Right.
SAP, CRM, big time manufacturing systems, the concentration of risk that is the counterpoint to the efficiencies that you get by having straight through processing has raised the ante. I mean, let's use that example, Doug. If I said, okay, SAP gets recovered first. Well, SAP isn't just one thing.
No.
Do we do the ERP? Do we do the payroll? Do we do the accounting? Do we do the business warehouse? You know, on and on and on. And I pick on SAP because it's, well, quite frankly, it's the one I'm dealing with. But if I had chosen Oracle, I would have come to the same conclusion.
100%. Yeah. I mean, any big system like that that's tightly integrated is there. But even questions like, do we restore the business warehouse or not? Somebody say, well, we can do without forecasting. And then you find out certain other portions of the app don't work without it. And these other hidden dependencies that aren't quite so obvious.
Yeah, if I don't have the forecasting, I don't know how much raw materials to buy.
Right.
And
Right.
I don't know how many people I need to assign in busy season. And it just, the dominoes continue to fall.
Yeah.
So how are your discussions when you're dealing with the executives or the business the business leaders, especially based on the risks that you're seeing for something like a large implementation? How do you get that point across to folks, is that there needs to be decisions, but there's going to be some folks who are going to be disappointed in the room, right? You're going to have some clients who are going to be disappointed because the decisions that you're making on who goes first or what comes up first. How do you get those messages across or discuss or get them to talk about the risk to the business in the path that they want to pick?
I see 2 paths.
Yeah.
Almost every time, well, it's kind of self-justifying. If they're coming to me to help them, they know that I'm coming with a certain mindset.
Yeah,
but
fair.
They say, this is a business problem. It's not an IT problem. And then when you tell the business, well, you've really got to go and talk to your customers now about what it would be like if it ever did happen. And oh, by the way, what happens to us if it happens to the customer. And you're going to have to make decisions about insurance, about cash flow, about legal matters. And I don't have to tell you, it just goes on and on.
Right.
They say, actually, it is an IT problem. Why don't we see if we can make that an alternative to SAP that will run just in the short term? I had one client that says, we're going to run the payroll twice. We're going to run it with one provider, and we're going to run it with the other, and say, don't print the checks. Well, nobody prints checks anymore. But just in case one goes down, they'll bring the other up. The other group, thankfully, and maybe I'm just doing a better job for them, I don't know, are saying, yeah, you know what? Having this conversation with customers now is a table setter to asking, hey, how can we be a better vendor to you? How can we ensure you? It's not only if we have a problem, it's if you have a problem.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
if you can't order from us, but you still have stores that you need to put things on the shelves, how can we come up with an agreement now as to what we're going to send you if that ever happens?
Yeah. If you normally buy 20 cases of something, we'll just keep shipping you 20 cases and we'll true up in a couple of months when you get your stuff back online.
Right. Or at least contingent orders,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You usually buy the red ones, the yellow ones, and the blue ones. We're just going to send you the red ones.
Yeah. It isn't ideal, but at least the business can still operate, right? You're giving you're giving your clients the opportunity to continue to operate.
Exactly so.
Yeah. I wanted to ask is how do you define that type of problem so that your clients or your business or the folks that you're working with understand that the complexity is part of the problem, and that if they're looking for this concept of resilience, how do you get them to embrace that they need to look at things, now you need to look at things differently. This isn't what it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Because of the interactions between and how closely knit everything is, how do you get folks to start embracing, or at least those aha moments when they recognize that this is such a more complex problem, to focus on a resilient approach as opposed to I'm going to go to the warehouse and pick up the tapes and load up the data center?
To a certain extent, I don't have to worry about that. The mere fact that they've decided we can't solve this problem alone, we need outside expertise, means that they've at least come to grips with some part of the problem. But I do think that usually what happens is they're alerted by an attack that they were able to fend off, and realization that maybe the next time I can't. I would love to say that there are a lot of far-seeing boards of directors and senior executives who say, this is tomorrow's, no, it's not tomorrow's problems, it's yesterday's problem, we'd better catch up. But as I said, it's been catch-up football for as long as I've been in information security. I don't even worry about it anymore. It's just, that's the playing field that we have to deal with.
So how do we move organizations? And I mean, this is, from what I understand, a lot of your professional practice. How do we move them out of focusing on data centers burning down to actually keeping the business operating? When, like you say, a good example, you can't get to your data or you can't trust your data.
Well, a lot of it is just pushing that rock up the hill. Programs like your own, training, speeches, articles, just getting the word out. The receptive audience of information security managers and IT auditors and risk managers and privacy professionals and so on can carry the ball so far. And then, oh yeah, it's just that guy in the information security department. Again, I heard his pitch last year.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's needed, and I think most companies have somebody like this, is a champion at the top level in Mahogany Row that is willing to pound on the table. And depending on the organization and depending on the industry, I've seen it all over the place. It's been the CFO, it's been the chief operating officer, sometimes the CIO.
Yep. Legal counsel's been some of my friends in the past as well. Not often, but to be fair, I've had some chief legal counsels that were really supportive of the program I was trying to put into place, and to your point earlier, actually recognized the complexity of the problem and that it was a business problem to solve, not an IT problem that you're going to dump more money on. So that it didn't happen often. When I did, man, that's the guy I took out for coffee as soon as I could, because at least I found somebody who spoke the same language in the boardroom as me.
Yeah. And of course, if you have access to the board, take your 15 minutes of fame and do the most you can do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I love the reference to Mahogany Row because things magically happen on PowerPoint that don't often work in real life. I'm wondering if we have to somehow bring some of the operational people into these conversations to say, I know what you were expecting to hear, but here's the facts. I can only go this fast with what you've given me to work with. And even if you gave me twice as much, I still couldn't go any faster because of X and Y.
Yeah, well, I go with you only so far, Doug. And then I say, look, an awful lot of things can be done if you're prepared in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So, just to give a simple example that's easier to talk to, where I came from, there was the production tape, the backup tape yesterday, and the grandfather after that, and it couldn't go wrong more than 2 days in a row, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That was the theory anyway.
Yeah, that was the theory. Yeah.
Okay. You see these studies, particularly from Poneman, that say that the average dwell time is 6 months. That means average, means some are 2 months and some are 10 months.
Right.
Who's keeping backups for a year? 6 months for that matter.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, look, the cost of low speed storage is literally pennies, pennies per gigabyte. But there's a lot of data, and how much of it are you going to keep? Because it costs money to store the data. I was dealing with a hospital chain, and we're talking about how many gigs per day or how many terabytes per day, and they said, no, you've got it wrong. It's petabytes. And by now they said, I said, why are you so much better or different? They said, because we do MRIs.
The imaging. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow. You never think of that, right? Because it's just the volume of information we're having to deal with now and to manage and to store. I can't even fathom what 6 months worth of that type of storage at the petabyte level would be.
Okay, but we also know that healthcare is one of the prime targets of cyber attackers.
Yeah, because the priority is typically patient health, not information security.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, you can plan accordingly, but those plans for faster response come at a higher price. And so a lot of times people are going to be reluctant to invest in that, hoping that it doesn't happen on their watch, I think, more than it's a bad idea.
So like I said, how many years have you been in information security? How many years have you been hearing that? This is the same battle we're going to fight forever, the fight for budget and the consideration that information security is essentially an insurance investment. And I've rejected that from day one. Secure companies are better companies. They do things better.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, agreed. Yeah, I know you're convinced. We got to convince them.
Yeah. Well, that's why we're still in the business, I guess. Yeah.
But I think that's the message that we have to get out. And there is some responsiveness to that. I mean, we were talking earlier in this conversation about privacy. And here we are with Apple selling privacy as an attribute of their products, that you should buy from us because we're going to protect your privacy. It's not just Apple, but they're the most visible. There's a real problem with that for a lot of companies because they don't want to go out and say, wow, we're secure, because you're only one hacker away from having the whole public relations campaign blow up on you.
It's hard to test that theory, right? If you make that statement as a differentiator in the market, you're asking for the next group of people to prove you wrong, right?
Yep. But you need to make the statement in a way that you can defend and that will mean something to the public. So you don't say, we can't be beat. You say, we're not only taking the obvious measures, we're doing certain other things that you may not know about, that and highlight what you're doing with crypto or highlight what you're doing with recoverability and so on.
Yeah. It's a chance to show you're reducing risk, really. And that's what clients want to see, is that overall they want to go with the company that is going to provide or reduce risk or provide a less risky environment to operate within. So you're trying to gain the trust or build trust from a client based on their perception of risk of working with you.
just to go back to, we were talking about hospitals before. No hospital says nobody ever dies here.
Yeah, yeah, fair.
But
Yeah,
if you
fair.
think you're sick, we're probably your best bet.
Yep, yep, we're better than the other guys down the road, right? So
That's
yeah,
it.
there you go. Yeah, yeah.
I don't know where we are on time, but
Yeah, we're good. Wanted to thank you again for coming on.
oh, my pleasure.
Excellent.
Just mention Risk Masters International somewhere here, and
Okay.
it's a boutique consulting firm around IT risk.
Thanks for listening to the latest podcast from Caffeinated Risk. Make sure you visit our website, caffeinatedrisk.com, to stay up to date on what we've been working on. Our website has bios of our podcast guests, posts about topics we're passionate about, and even a library of reference material we find valuable in the work we do every day. And don't forget to subscribe to Caffeinated Risk on your favorite podcast service. This way, you'll be notified when we release our next podcast, and you can listen to our previous guests just in case you missed them. Thanks so much for listening to Caffeinated Risk.